Hi, everybody. I am Paige. I'm the teen librarian at Lethbridge Public Library, and this is our final armchair travel session for 2021. It is all part of the Read the World Challenge, which is a teen programming challenge for the year of 2021. Since most of us have been stuck at home for the past year and a little bit, I thought it would be fun to celebrate reading around the world in 2021. So the Teen Advisory Group helped me come up with some challenges and some armchair travel destinations. And so today we're going to talk about Paris, which is one of my favorite places in the world. I'm going to just bop over to a screen share, and then you'll be able to see all the lovely pictures. All right, so again, welcome to Paris avec Paige. We are going to take a little virtual trip to Paris this afternoon. First off, it's important that while we think about traveling, we also think about where we are. The Lethbridge Public Library acknowledges that we are gathered here on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains, and we pay respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationships to the land. The city of Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. So things to think about while we're thinking about the world at large and also where we are here at home. So why Paris? I have been to Paris a lot, I think. I always think it's not a lot, and then I realize, no, not everybody goes to Paris all the time, and I don't go all the time, but I have been a lot. My very first trip to Paris was when I was a university student. I was doing my undergrad at the University of Lethbridge, and I had the opportunity to do a class in art history where instead of looking at slides of artwork on a big screen at the front of a classroom, I instead got to go to Paris and see the actual art in museums. So that was a 3-week trip in the summer of 2001. It was really, really cool and really, I guess, set my love for the city and made me want to go back over and over again. In 2006, before I ran off to grad school to learn how to become a librarian, I moved to Paris and got a little apartment and stayed there for the spring before going to Italy for about 3 weeks after that. It was absolutely amazing. I was terribly, terribly homesick and felt totally all alone for like the first little while. Then my mom popped over for the Easter vacation week, spring break, which helped a lot. And also there was cheese and bread and museums, and it was an amazing time. Once I figured out that I was going to be all alone, and that was totally fine. The year after that, when I was in grad school, a friend and I flew from Halifax to Europe for a quick little break, just because flights were so cheap at that point. In 2013, I went with one of the other librarians, Miss Kareen from the Lethbridge Public Library, and I ran off to Europe as well. We went to Amsterdam. We stayed at the hotel that John Green stayed at when he wrote The Fault in the Stars, because of course we did. We're librarians and we're nerds. In 2017, I went to Paris again. I got to stay for a week with my friend Jen, who at that point was living in Paris. She works for the Canadian Embassy in Paris and has an amazing apartment. And it was just lovely to be able to see her again and see Paris kind of through the eyes of somebody who lives there for a long term. I also ran away to Wales and London. Wales. So I thought I would start out by showing you my little apartment where I lived in the spring of 17. It was on Rue de Cherche-Midi. It was very sweet. You had to go through like 2 courtyards and then up either an elevator, a couple up to the 3rd floor, or flights of stairs up to the 3rd floor. And then it had a little balcony looking out onto the courtyard, which was so lovely. It was just great. So there is tiny and much younger Paige. Those were the doors to my apartment building. Ignore the garbage. The one thing about Paris, it is both a very dirty and very clean city in some ways, in that this was after September 11th, 2001. And so there weren't garbage bins around, because one of the things in big cities is you don't want to have a bunch of metal garbage bins around, because they can cause a risk for explosions, people putting things in them, and the metal is not good. So garbage bags are clear, they're plastic, and they just kind of sit out on the street, but there's like daily pickup of garbage. And then there are people that the city workers would go up and down the street where I lived every morning with hoses and big brooms and like clean everything off. So it's very, very, very tidy in some ways, and yet not in other ways. So yes, these are my lovely big doors here, and there's a little key code here. This is my kitchen slash dining room slash living room slash bedroom, because it was a tiny little studio apartment, and it was everything was like white and lavender and plum colored. It was a very color coded apartment, and I loved it. The other thing that I never figured out, I figured out the oven, but there was like a weird thing where the oven was also the microwave, because of weird German appliance creations. And that scared me, so I never really used the microwave settings because it didn't make sense to me. So that was my tiny, tiny little kitchen. The bed was a couch, but it was very comfortable. There was a TV. I watched American TV shows translated into French because I found them hilarious. But the best part about the apartment, apart from the fact that it was in Paris, was that, whoa, we bounced way ahead. Apologies, let's go back. Again, first time using Canva. It's pretty, but I don't quite know how it works as well as PowerPoint. This was the view from my apartment. Very classic French Parisian rooftops. You can see kind of the edge of the balcony there. And about 1.5 streets away from me, there was an old monastery. So they would ring the monastery bells at all the different times of day that the bells get rung. So like matins and all of that. So every morning I woke up entirely too early to the sound of church bells, but it was kind of nice. And then I would just go back to bed. So living in Paris made me really, really happy. And I got to wander around and tour, the obvious things. So what are some of the obvious things that you think of when you think of Paris?
The Eiffel Tower.
The Eiffel Tower, very good. 1 out of 1.
And then there's like
what else?
It's like,
let's see if I've picked them all. The Eiffel Tower is the big one, of course, and it is the one I think that I started with. Did I start? Yes, I started with the Eiffel Tower. So La Tour Eiffel was built for one of the World Fairs. It was supposed to be temporary. They built it. Everybody was like, "Oh, what is that horrible tower thing? It's hideous." But they were convinced to leave it up in part because it makes a really, really good radio and communications tower because it is so tall. Paris is not a tall city. If you think of a lot of, big cities around the world, a lot of times, they have these huge soaring skyscrapers and things like that. Like think of New York City, right? It's all skyscrapers downtown. Paris, for most of it, until you get out to the edges, apart from a few key exceptions, tops out at about 6 stories. All the buildings that were a lot of old buildings were torn down and rebuilt by Baron von Haussmann, and those are those kind of iconic sandstony colored buildings with gray roofs that you see in Paris. And they top out at 6 stories, and that was the rule, and it still is the rule in most of Paris, the central Paris areas. You can't build higher than that, so that's why the Eiffel Tower sticks out so much. There's nothing else really that tall except for the Montparnasse.
Can you see it from like a lot of places?
Yes, you can see the Eiffel Tower. I mean, depending where you are, some of the streets are really narrowed, so you can't, see long distances and stuff like that. But a lot of places where the streets are lined up properly, or if you're in anywhere that's a little bit higher, you can definitely see it from many places in Paris. It's often, like maybe just like the little top bit. It's hard to get a view of like the whole thing, including those flared out legs of it, but you can see it from a lot of different places, especially along the riverside. So it took me 3 trips to get up to the top of the Eiffel Tower. The first trip, the art history trip, was like I said, in the middle of summer, and Paris was a big tourist city, and it was crazy busy, and I just decided I had better things to do, like eat crepes and go dancing and fun things like that. So I didn't bother going up the top of the Eiffel Tower my first trip to Paris.
You didn't bother going up to the top of the Eiffel Tower?
I know. I don't know.
Then you went to Paris?
Yeah. We went to the Eiffel Tower, but we didn't take the elevators. We didn't go up to the top. The second time when I was there, I think I mentioned my mom came for a week or 10 days on sort of Easter spring break. And we went up to the top, and I don't think this is the right angle to see it. We went up to the top of the Arc de Triomphe, which is in the center of one of the really huge roundabouts, and you have like 8 lanes of traffic going around and around, and it's crazy and wonderful. We went up to the top of that because you can get some really cool and different views from there, and you can see the Eiffel Tower from the top of that. But my third trip to Paris, when I went with my friend Candace, it was May, end of April, start of May. It was absolutely glorious and beautiful and sunny, like you can see in this photo. And we did go up to the top of the Eiffel Tower, and we're super tourists and took all the photos, and we're big dorks, and it was really, really fun. So this is looking across the river. Each of those kind of big curved wings of buildings, they're 2 separate buildings, but they're built as mirrors. Each of those is a museum. One is the Museum of Man, basically. It's an anthropology museum. And the other is I want to say the Maritime Museum, or transportation. It has a lot of boats. It has one of Marie Antoinette's river barges. That's absolutely gorgeous.
Did you take a picture?
I don't have a picture in this slideshow. One of the things with this is some of my older trips, I don't have digital versions of my photos. I have them in photo albums. And also, inside museums, they're very like, no, with the photos. Not because it actually hurts anything. I mean, the amount of flash you'd have to use in a photo to actually hurt most paintings, sculptures, barges, etc., is you'd have to do it way more times than it would ever be exposed to. Mostly it's just because they want to sell postcards, right? They want to get, you can't take photos, so you have to buy their photos. Arguably, their postcards and posters and photos and books and things are going to be much nicer than your photos ever will. But that's a thing. So no, I don't have a photo of any of the insides of those. But I did visit both of those. When I was living in Paris, I wasn't working, I wasn't studying, I was basically just wandering and going to museums and just having a delightful time. Highly recommend. So that's looking across the river. This is a little bit more, you can kind of see a little bit more. And I forgot to look up which cemetery this is because I cannot remember because this was 15 years ago. But that little gray and green center park area with lots of trees, that is one of the cemeteries. There aren't a lot of cemeteries in Paris. Instead, there are catacombs. So one of the things they did when they were rebuilding a lot of Paris and restructuring so it looks this way, kind of this classic Parisian look, is in the middle of the night, they basically dug up all the old cemeteries so they could use the land for other things and put all of the bones, the bodies, in catacombs, in tunnels below the city that were either they either date back to Roman times or were extended upon Roman tunnels. Those tunnels also form the basis of like sewer systems and all that. And the cool thing is you can tour most of that when you're in Paris. I didn't do the sewer tour, but I did do the catacombs when I was there, and it is so cool. There are walls made out of skulls. If you're at all into strange and weird things, visit or look them up online. There's amazing online tours.
Walls made out of skulls. That sounds so weird. Did you go to like the arch thing? There's like the
The
big
Arc de
arch.
Triomphe.
What?
The Arc de Triomphe, the big.
The big arch thing?
Yeah. Yes. And in this photo, I think, oh no, it's not quite far enough. You can see taller buildings in this photo, and that's kind of a business district on the edge. Well, it's not really the edge anymore, but one of the edges kind of Paris. And there's a huge La Défense is what it's called, the defense, because it's business and military and stuff like that. But there's a huge modern version of a big arch, and I think it's in one of my later photos. It's quite cool. All right, so that was the Eiffel Tower. This is looking down through the center, where the people look like ants. And it's quite cool. You can see it's like you can kind of see the line going to one of the elevators there, and that's nothing. Like that is a short, tiny little Eiffel Tower line. It tends to get absolutely bananas around there. This is also in 2007. Between then and now, there have been there's a lot more increased security around everything in Paris, and lots of public buildings and things like that in France. So it's not as open as it used to be around the base of the Eiffel Tower. A lot more fencing and security and things like that. But you can see how kind of open and lovely it is.
There's a lot
Also,
of
there's a
greenery.
horse and carriage.
There's also green.
Yes.
Splashes
Very,
of green.
very green. Yeah. Everything, like all the parks and things, are all very, very well tended for in Paris. Until August, when everybody kind of goes on vacation and they figure, it's hot. Why keep watering the grass? It's just the tourists who are here. Who cares? And then that's when they quit caring about whether you walk in the grass in the parks and stuff like that. And so they just pick. Other big thing in Paris, the Cathédrale Notre Dame de Paris. So this is Notre Dame Cathedral. I haven't been there since the big fire. That was just 2 years ago. Yeah. So a lot of the roof burned. The rose windows, which the next slide. Nope, this is Notre Dame Cathedral at about 6 a.m. I took one of my friends on the third trip. I took her to the train station really, really, really early in the morning. I think she caught like the very first train to the airport. And then as I was walking around the city, I guess there is one person in this photo, but I stood in front of Notre Dame Cathedral at about 5:30 in the morning, and there wasn't a single person.
I can't hear that.
So these are the rose windows in Notre Dame Cathedral. They're absolutely massive. I forgot to label which was the north one and which was the south one, but one is north and one is south. And they are phenomenal feats of both engineering and art, obviously. And thankfully, as far as I know, in the fires from 2019, these were not damaged. They were able to save them.
That's so cool.
This is just a badly lit and overexposed, but you can see the archways and to get a little bit of a feel for the height of what it's like to be inside. So Eiffel Tower, Notre Dame, those are the big obvious spots, and I think probably the places that get visited the most. Like I said, when I lived there, I went to a lot of museums. One of the cool things about being younger in Paris, and by that I mean under like 24 or under, is the museums are basically free for you to visit. Sometimes there's certain times you have to go. You have to have proof that you're a student or of a certain age, but you can often get into museums for free or for like very, very discounted rates, which is one of the reasons I went to so many museums when I was there. I spent a lot of time at the Louvre, but I would do like an hour and a half every couple of evenings kind of thing, and just do little bits of it at a time, rather than trying to see everything at once.
It's kind of weird that they don't do money, because like they probably get a lot of money from like paying for tourists to go inside the museum.
Oh yeah, they make a ton of money. through ticket sales and stuff like that, which, I mean, to keep up a museum like that, it takes a lot of money. But the museums are all run nationally. They're like government run and funded through the French government. And as with the British government, a lot of things, if it's funded by the government and owned nationally and stuff like that, they try to make it as accessible as possible. So instead of having to pay, you know, however many euros to get in, I have no idea what it would be now. Yeah, I was able to get in. I think Thursday nights, I think, were free student nights. So if you went after 5 p.m. and you were 24 or under, you could go in for free for about 2 hours, and that was amazing. My favorite museum, though, in Paris is probably the Musée Rodin. I'm a sculpture fan as opposed to a painting fan when it comes to art. And the work that Rodin did is just super cool. I love his stuff. I really like hands in sculpture, and he did these like big, massive, gnarly. This is one of his most famous works, The Thinker, Le Penseur. There's lots of versions of this around the world because as a bronze sculptor, he would make a piece and then there would be multiple castings of it. So multiple versions of it around the world. The other nice thing about the Musée Rodin is you can pay to go into the museum, you can pay to go into the gardens, or you can do like a joint ticket and do both. What I often did is I just like the gardens so much. It's a beautiful, small little hedgerowed garden with big trees. And there are tons of sculptures around it. They change some of them, and then there's some that are permanent installations. And there's also a very nice little restaurant in the courtyard. So that was a nice little place to kind of hang out in the afternoon. I forgot to put a warning at the start of this presentation. There will be some nudity, and it's all sculptural nudity. So just a warning.
Okay, hard to not notice.
Yeah, there are body parts. The sculpture. But yeah, so this is an example of one of the giant hands that Rodin. Really big feet, really big hands. Kind of, they look right when you look at his sculptures, like they fit with the sculpture. But if you think about the proportions of them, they're actually way bigger than they should be. But it works, and it just adds more feeling, more emotion. Kind of curled up person kind of holding a big jug. The restaurant is just kind of on the other side of those planes. That is my absolutely favorite museum. The Musée Guimet is one of my other favorite museums. Both of these I like because they aren't, the Rodin is fairly famous, but the Guimet is very much not as famous as a lot of the other ones. It was started in the late 1800s, and it is a museum of art from Asian countries. So, I mean, the shorthand of this is it's basically stuff that a lot of, you know, rich white dudes and explorers stole from a lot of temples and jungle ruins and things like that. Recently, they've done a lot of really good explanation and education around this aspect of the museum. And it's just different. It was different from anything else that I'd really ever seen before. And I think that's why I spent so much time. I spent, I don't even know how many hours of the day, but just wandering and reading and looking at all the things. So this is a statue from the Khmer. It's a Aspara. No, that's wrong. Sorry. No, I'm not going to remember the right word for it, so I'm not even going to try because I just tell you the wrong. As you can see here, lots of like statuary that has been fairly obviously pulled off of, you know, pillars and walls and parts of temples and things like that. And then there are other cool things like this. This is a model of a pavilion. The people in this model, I'd say, are about 3 or 4 inches tall, to give you an idea of the scale. And there's so many neat little details, all the carving and all of the displays. There's like a bamboo tree in the background, and flower arrangements everywhere, and little, like little windows to peek through and everything like that. And it was a model example of what a place like this might look like, so that the people, 100, 150 years ago could get a taste of what it was like. Many, many, many Buddha statues in this museum. There's an entire wing that is all Buddhist art. And it changes, like they'll bring in modern stuff as well as featuring the older parts of the collection. Again, this is a piece of a ruin that has been borrowed, taken, rehomed perhaps. It's about 10 feet tall or so, so it's quite large. And then it has all the different layers, and then the carvings of the people around each different layer. Just this beautiful, beautiful soft white stone. The Louvre is the obvious, the biggie, right? The Louvre and the Orsay are probably the two biggest museums in Paris. The Pompidou with the modern stuff as well. Picasso Museum is quite small in Paris. But all of those I visited as part of the art history tour. And then I went back. I often go back to the Louvre because, like I said, I'm kind of a statue nerd, and they have a lot of good stuff. So the building that houses the Louvre was first built as kind of a fortress in the 1100s. By the 1600s, it was rebuilt as a royal palace. And then after the revolution and into modern day, it's become an art museum. So this is the modern front courtyard. The pyramids, I think, were put in, I want to say, the late 80s. And the cool thing with the big one is it's actually open to the space below. There's like a little shopping gallery and lots of cool underground spaces, because there are underground galleries. You can go and you can see the old foundation of the fortress under the newer build. So this is from inside the pyramid at night, looking up into the building. And like I said, statue nerd. I believe this is Athena. I think there's, again, a warning, there's some, naked statue bits coming up. Cupid and Psyche by Canova. This is one of his. And there's a whole gallery full of Canovas and other lovely, lovely marble statues. Another version of Cupid and Psyche. One of the things I love about Paris is all the green spaces. So, I mean, Lethbridge does pretty well with parks and trees and stuff like that, but Paris, maybe a little better.
It's green instead of yellow.
They have quite a gardening squad, so that helps. So, we have very good flower and shrub planters in Lethbridge. I will give them points for that. But in Paris, they swap out the flowers in the flower beds. Like if they start to look sad, they dig them all out and replace them with new ones, like in an afternoon. The Jardin des Tuileries is the gardens that are just on the edge of the Louvre and stretch down towards the Champs-Élysées. Again, lots of statues, lots of flowering trees. When I was there, the chestnut trees, that's the one kind of in the very, very background here. This is a chestnut tree. Those were all flowering, and it makes the air all flowery and sweet smelling. Thankfully, I'm not allergic, so I could enjoy it. You can see the Louvre in the background. Tulips were finished, and they were starting to put in all of the lovely spring flowers. Everything is very, very regimented. The hedges are cut in very square box formations. The trees are all pruned up to a certain level. Like I said, the flowers are replaced as soon as they start to look a little shabby. Everything is very classical in terms of the garden design. This is my favorite statue in Paris. There's another better photo of him later. I can't remember what he is an allegory for, I just, for whatever reason, this one makes me laugh, and I think he's hilarious. And just
Looks big.
he is very big. He's probably 10 or 12 feet tall. It's hard to tell sometimes with statues because once they're up on a plinth, like up on a base, and because there's that distance between you and them, it's really hard to tell. Artists use that a lot and architects as well for optical illusions. On a lot of buildings in Paris, you can kind of see it here because you're far enough back. The windows at the bottom are going to be taller than the windows further up. And one of the things that does is it makes the building actually look even more imposing when you're right next to it, because it looks like it's stretching way, way, way far up. So this is looking around. Again, there's my dude, the statue that I like. This is looking down, and you can see through here, you can see the Egyptian obelisk, which is, it's surrounded by a traffic circle.
There's an arch thing behind it.
Yes, that's the Arc de Triomphe. Yes, that is what, so my mom and I went up to, you can go up to the top, or you could, I think you still can. You can go up to the top of here, and it gives you really cool views because everything kind of stars out from there. A lot of the neighborhoods kind of center upon that space. Further down here where the trees kind of get boxier, that is the start of the Champs-Élysées. And so there's part that's a park. And then after that, it's where all the fancy shops are. So lots of designer shops and things like that. And a Marks and Spencer's. This is a little further. This is from an earlier trip. This is, you can see it's spring break, and you can see all of the American high school tourists in this one. And you can see that the trees aren't yet leafed out because it's earlier in the spring. But everything along here, it's called the alignement, or the alignment. Everything lines up. So if you stand at the pyramid at the Louvre and you look down in this direction, you see that it's the main pathway of the Tuileries, and then you see the obelisk, and then you see the road of the Champs-Élysées. There's also a fountain, two fountains, matching fountains either side of the obelisk, and then you see the Arc. And from there, you can't really see it from here. You can almost see that there's kind of a straight line at the top of the, I think you guys can see a blue dot right at the top of that. There's kind of that straight line that's very misty through the Arc de Triomphe. On the other side of the Arc de Triomphe, again, down a bit more of the road, there is the Arc de la Défense, which is a big square modern. It basically looks like something from a science fiction museum or a science fiction movie. And I don't have a good photo of it, but it's kind of cool how, again, it all lines up straight down that street. This is one of those fountains that's either side of the obelisk. And this is my favorite fountain. So, as far as I know, I mean, there might be ones that I don't know about, but this is my favorite that I know about. It's all mermaids and mermen holding sea creatures that are spitting water. And it's just very over the top.
Like, squeeze these fish.
Yeah, they're basically like hugging giant salmon or something. I don't know. Actually, they're prettier looking fish than salmon. Salmon have those weird beaky faces. These are a little prettier than that. The Luxembourg Gardens, the Jardin de Luxembourg. This was about a 2 or 3 minute walk from the apartment where I lived. I lived in the 6e. There's the main neighborhoods in Paris. They're all numbered, and that's what their postal codes are based off of. Basically. So I was 2 or 3 minute walk from the Luxembourg, which is full of little nooks and fountains and little ponds and lovely green armchairs to sit in. It was
green armchairs.
Yeah, most of the chairs, I shouldn't say all, but most of the chairs in the big fancy Paris parks are this lovely dark green, kind of, so they blend in, right? They don't interrupt your view as you're looking through the green.
I feel like Paris is like a circle.
Sorry, it's a what?
Circle.
Yes. It's I should have put a map in, but the river kind of does a curve, And so there's the two sides of the river. The places that I like are usually on that south bank of the river. Those are the places that I know best, just because that's where my apartment was. And so that was where I was just walking around every day. And then there was a bunch of other stuff that I wanted to share. And so strange and lovely things that didn't fit any other theme. Street art being one of them. There's a lot of really, really, really cool street art in Paris. Small, large, talented, not so talented. One of the things you'll see all over Paris on the edges of street signs and things like that are these little alien creatures, and I love them.
Why?
It's just something an artist started putting these little alien invaders. They're done with tiles, and they're just affixed to buildings. And you'll see them all over Paris. And it's just a thing. It's just a
like
thing.
They didn't do anything about it, so it's just kind of there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're just kind of fun to try to spot. They're usually quite high up. So this would be right here. This is kind of the edge of the first floor of a building. And then there's things like this, which are these crazy large scale art pieces. There's different levels of graffiti, right? There's the tagging, and then there's the art pieces. There's things that are commissioned. There's things that are done under the secret of night.
And then there's
one of my favorite ones, and I don't have a picture of it because it was just when I was on the metro that I would see it, because it was down in the metro tunnels, was this like funky looking pink rabbit with a yellow jacket on a skateboard. And I liked it because it was about 30 to 45 seconds before the stop that I would always get off of. So if I was kind of like zoning out on the trains, because trains are very relaxing, as soon as I saw the pink bunny, I was like, okay, time to wake up and get off the train.
Pink bunny.
Yeah, this is in the far north. I think it's in, I can't remember which district it's in. This is a really, really well-known piece of street art, so it's featured in a lot of tours and things like that. It's also by a really, really great pizza joint. So yeah, find the art.
It's also by what?
A really good pizza place. That it's on one of the canals. Paris has these funky canals in kind of the northeast kind of the city, and it's a really like cool younger neighborhoods, and yeah, good pizza, good street art. I threw a link into here, and most of the museums I have links as well. I will share the links otherwise, but I wanted to put in, you can basically Google Paris street art and find all sorts of fantastic articles about it. This is my favorite restaurant, one of my favorite restaurants in Paris. This is the restaurant I go to first every time I go. Probably because it's the one that David, the professor of the art history tour, took us to first when we went to Paris, and that was my first trip. It's a Moroccan restaurant. Paris has wonderful food from all over the world because of the immigrant population that lives in Lethbridge too, that lives in Paris. And also, it's one of the things that comes from being a former colonial power, right? Is you end up with a lot of food and food influences from cultures from around the world. So this is a Moroccan restaurant. It is just a couple of, one river and a couple of streets south of Notre Dame. It's a super touristy neighborhood, but it is a fantastic, fantastic restaurant. They specialize in couscous and grilled meats, but it all comes, you get a platter covered in grains of couscous, which is like very, very, very small fluffy pasta, which sounds weird, but it's delicious. And then you get a lovely little bowl full of vegetable stew, basically, but it's got like a tomatoey broth, chickpeas, zucchini, carrots and turnips, sometimes squash, and the spices that they use are just absolutely glorious. They're really warm, not spicy, but just like really warm and rich tasting. And then they'll grill chicken or lamb, They do lovely merguez sausages and things like that. And so the basic is the couscous and the stew, and then you can kind of, for more money, add on whatever else you would like grilled along with it. And it's just absolutely delicious. So not traditional French food, but my favorite food in Paris. And this is the lady that stands outside and tries to get everybody to come in. That's very much Paris, especially in this neighborhood, the Rue de la Huchette. Lots of really tiny, skinny but long restaurants, and everybody is trying to get you to come in. And so they're out on the street, you know, calling out to you and being like, ours is the best, you got to come here, look at this fish, it's amazing.
Look at this fish.
Yeah, they'll have like displays of their food. Only it's kind of like what I've seen sometimes in like Japanese restaurants and stuff in Victoria, where it's not actually food, it's models of the food. They make like sculpture of food and be like, this is what our fish would look like, not a real fish. Some of the Greek restaurants do have like ice coolers, and they store the fish out to be like, look how fresh our fish is. It's amazing, come eat. Yeah, but no, Moroccan restaurant, super awesome. When I went to stay the last time, my friend's apartment was on the 5th or 6th floor of her building. On the first floor was a pâtisserie, a little pastry shop, and it was owned by a Japanese. It was run by a Japanese pastry chef, and the place is called Mori Yoshida, and just the prettiest little tiny pastries. So this was a lemon and lime tart. It was about this big probably, and then it had this funky little meringue sploosh on top. Absolutely delicious. It was tasty, very tasty. Very easy to have pastry every day in Paris, and it's everywhere. It's everywhere, taunting you. These are some more of the things from Mori Yoshida. The bottom one is they call it a brownie. It's a little fancy to be a brownie, but it's a kind of a hazelnut chocolate brownie type cake. The pink one, I think, was passion fruit.
It looks like an eyeball.
I know, it's an odd, it looked better from the side, but I wanted a picture of like all three of them at once. And then the other one was also, I think, a hazelnut or maybe coffee cake. But there was something different every day when I looked through the window. It was something different. It was just lovely. On the flip side of the fancy pastries, these are like super basic. Walking home from school, these are what the school kids eat when they walk home. They pop into a bakery and they buy a bag. It's like a little paper bag full of chouquettes, and they are basically the same type of pastry that you would use for an eclair or a cream puff. They're a choux pastry, and so they're cooked, and then they're kind of, when they're still hot, they're tossed with like really chunky grains of sugar. So the white is all like little chunks of sugar, and they're basically like a French Timbit.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
Right? Yeah, just a lot nicer. Yeah. And the other great thing about going to Paris in the spring is their strawberries are the best strawberries you have ever tasted. I don't know what is in their soil and their sunshine, but they make them. They grow very, very strong. I love the markets, not as much as my mom loves the flower markets, but every neighborhood, they have big supermarkets and things like that where people buy things, but it's also a lot of shopping in small stores. So when I would go out to get food, I would go to one store, I would go to a bakery to get my bread. I could go to a cheese shop to get my cheese, meat, like a butcher to get meat. And then lots of little tiny grocery stores with flowers and fruit and vegetables all in front of them. And it's lovely. Like there's not, Paris apartments, mine was teeny tiny. Fridges are always those little small fridges. Everybody does their shopping kind of the day of. That's changed, in the last year and a half because of restrictions, because of the pandemic. But, you wouldn't go and buy food for 2 weeks because you'd have nowhere to put it. So you would shop for, you know, that day, maybe the next day kind of thing. You buy your bread fresh every day, and all of that. And it's a lovely way to kind of cook and make sure that it's also not a very wasteful way to cook, right? Because you're picking things up and you're using it right away. It's not sitting around and, you know, going sad at the back of your fridge. But yes, the flower markets are just beautiful. And so I would always buy fresh flowers whenever I was there, because why not? They're gorgeous.
Hello.
So this is kind of a bonus. When Candace and I were there, we'd gone to London. We did the British Museum. We saw, you know, like all the classic London stuff. We went to Edinburgh. We saw the castle. We saw all the cannons. It was really cool. We got to Paris. We did, you know, the major museums. And then we said, that's been a lot of museums and history and serious stuff. So we decided to run away about half an hour, 45-minute train ride outside of Paris. It's Disneyland Paris. It was celebrating its 15th birthday when we were there in 2007. So that would make it its 29th this year. So 30 years for Disneyland Paris next year. And I've been to Disneyland. At that point, I'd been to Disneyland in LA once as a grown-up. And we went here as grown-ups. And this was arguably more fun because we went on a Tuesday or Wednesday morning. The only other people who were there were like nannies with young children. So like if you wanted to get on It's a Small World, good luck. You're never going to get on those rides because there were just way too many people queuing for those. But if you wanted to go on any of the big rides, like the roller coasters, the Indiana Jones one, I think we did 3 times because there was no ride. It was like us and like 2 other dudes. It was so fun. Yeah, so we ran around Disneyland Paris and we're basically big kids, and it was super fun. So because it was the 15th birthday, each of these, like, so I think it's really small, but I think this is Goofy, and Mickey and Minnie are down here. This is Lumiere, but each of them is holding, there's 15 of them, Dumbo and I think Tinkerbell, maybe Peter Pan are up there. Each of them is holding birthday candles because it's their birthday, which I thought was a nice touch. And I think this one is, I think each of the Disney parks, the castles are all a little bit different. And I believe this one is Sleeping Beauty's castle, because the stained glass, you can go inside kind of this part of this level of it here. And it's the story of Sleeping Beauty told through stained glass. There we go. Oh, sorry, I forgot to remove some buttons. And I forgot to swap up the photo. Excellent. So we'll end with Buzz Lightyear because that's the most Parisian thing I can think of. I'm going to bop out of the presentation now so I can actually see the chat and everything like that. Thank you for listening to me kind of blather on about my favorite things in Paris. It was really fun putting the presentation together because I got to you know, think back through all those lovely memories and things like that. Any other questions that you can think of, or anything you want to know about? What else do you want to know about Paris?
I don't know. It's just like, do
No
you ever plan on going to Paris again?
I would like to, yeah. I have my mug will show up. It'll be backwards, I think. But yes, this is my favorite museum.
I could read it, but I could barely read it.
Yeah, it's like weird and scripty, and yeah.
Paris is always a good
idea. Yeah, which is a feeling I very much hold with. I think because it's a place I feel very comfortable in it because I know it now because of having spent so much time there. Yeah, it's definitely somewhere I will always go back to if I can. It's different every time I go because time passes, and I get to go visit different things each time. Museums, I'm yeah, I'm a museum nerd when I travel, and they're always changing their exhibits, and there's always cool things happening. There was actually an exhibit that was starting about a week after I left Paris the last time, and I was really disappointed to miss it because it was at the Anthropological Museum, and it was the history and art of tattoos around the world. And I was so bummed to have missed it. And then it just so happened that when I was in Toronto for a conference about 2 years after that, the same exhibit was on loan to the Toronto Art Gallery, which was amazing because I got to see all this cool tattoo art. And they did some really cool things with Inuit northern tattoo artists that was super cool, and like a special part of it when it was in Canada was in addition to the show. Yeah, so yes, I will definitely go back to Paris because there's always cool new stuff. Let me think. Good things to like souvenirs and stuff. I buy tea a lot because it's easy to pack.
Because it's a bag.
Exactly. You can take it out of its boxes. Though when Miss Kareen, the other librarian, was traveling, I like to share this story. Miss Kareen travels very light. She does not pack a lot of luggage. So she had like her big tote bag that was essentially her suitcase. And she'd managed to cram about like 8 or 10 tins of tea. Some of them were about as big as this mug. Some of them were, like smaller little box tins and stuff like that. But they're all metal, right? Tins are made of metal. And tins from tea shops are strange and wonderful shapes and designs. And so going through security at the airport on her way home, she definitely got pulled aside. And they were like, what in the world is in your bag? And she's like, oh, it's tea. And she'd packed it very carefully to get everything inside and to be able to zip the zipper open. And they just like opened it and like were dumping tins everywhere. And they're like, oh no, it is tea. It's all tea.
It's just tea.
Yeah. So yes. Travel, buy tea. I like to buy things like scarves and jewelry and things because that's also packable. I like to buy books when I travel because I'm a librarian and it's kind of a thing, except they're a pain to come back. When I went on the art history tour, because I was there for 3 weeks and we were going to all these museums, and I was like, oh, wonderful, I'll buy, like, why buy postcards when I could buy a book that has even more pictures? I had to buy a second bag because I had too many books to bring home. And I think my bag weighed like an extra. I ended up packing all the books in my carry-on because of the weight and the size and everything. So I had a backpack full of.
Your books are heavy.
They are. So this is the one. This is the book that I bought at the Louvre, and it's kind of like all the things. Not all the things, because obviously it's a huge collection, but like all the sort of pieces of note from all the different collections and stuff like that. So there's the stuff from the Egyptian wing, and then there's stuff from the Greco-Roman wings, and weird busts of old dead dudes and stuff. And then the Louvre collections only go up to a certain year, and from that point, the Orsay Museum picks up. So that's why there are no Impressionists or any of sort of the 1910s, 20s onwards. Those are all at the Orsay Museum across the river. So if you go there expecting to see a Monet, you won't.
A what?
A painting by Monet. So like the water lilies, or those sorts of big pointillism and impressionist kind of paintings are all across the river.
Just go across the river. You don't want to be here.
Yes. So know what type of art you want to see before you decide which museum to go to.
I just end up going to all of them.
Yes. And the other cool thing with the Orsay and the Louvre is one of them closes, I think, on Mondays, and one of them closes on Tuesdays, or one of them closes on Tuesdays and one of them closes on Wednesdays. So they alternate, they close one day a week, and they swap out, they alternate those days. So there's always one that is open and one that's closed for those 2 days.
So you
They
just
don't
kind of go
both
across the river and do the same one.
Yes, you have to know these things. I will put up, like I said, I will put up the links. I'm going to, I will put the recording of this fairly informal session up on our YouTube channel, and in the links, or in the text part under the YouTube video, I will put all the links to the museums, because one of the things that French museums have done, or Parisian museums especially, do very well, and that they have gotten even better with, I think, over the last year and a half because of pandemic closures, is they do really cool virtual collection features and visits. So there are some fabulous videos. There are like 3D movable images of the sculptures and things like that. There's some really cool interactive things on those websites. They should all be available to translate into English. The only one where I had trouble finding an English version of the website was the Guimet, the Asian art museum. But it's worth still looking at it. Any last questions?
The last part, because your voice just kind of disappeared.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sometimes your voice does that.
Oh dear. I hope you caught most of it. I'm sorry if you didn't. Hopefully the recording caught most of it, and you can, if there was anything that you were really sad about missing, you can catch it on the YouTube video.
It sometimes randomly disappears.
I think it's probably because I get talking too quickly, and I'm not enunciating properly because I'm just excited because of Paris. I think, I don't know. Also, it's one of the library's older laptops that I'm using, so that could be why. Blame the technology.
If I can't translate into English, I might as well just try to read it because I can speak French.
Most of those websites have English versions. If you look at, usually somewhere at the top, there's a way to change languages because they have so many visitors from all over the world, right? So that is usually available. The Guimet, the Asian Art Museum, was one where it wasn't as obvious if they had an English translation or not. But most of the big ones, the Guimet is a private museum as well. It's not one of the state-run museums. So I think, or at least I think it's not part of the big roster of national French museums.
The roster.
What else is good? Yeah, the food, everything is great for food in Paris, basically. Some of the best Vietnamese food I've ever had was in Paris, in little hole-in-the-wall restaurants run by lovely elderly couples.
Hole in the walls.
Mm-hmm. Sushi is really good. There's a whole neighborhood that Miss Crean and I found north of the Louvre, a couple blocks in the Tuileries, that is kind of almost like little Japan. Like it's this very, very Japanese little neighborhood in Paris, and there are the most wonderful restaurants. And there are bakeries. There's been a cool sort of cultural exchange between France and Japan, especially Paris and Japan, where French pastry chefs would go to Japan because the people there were like, oh, the French pastries, the macarons, all of those fancy little things, oh, so lovely. So they would go over there, but then they'd be influenced by the flavors and traditions in Japan and then bring that back to Paris. And then Japanese pastry chefs would come to Paris, and it's this whole back and forth lovely cultural exchange that just leads to better snacks. And really, that's what we want.
All the foods.
Mm-hmm. I had lovely, all sorts of green tea flavored pastries, just beautiful. And the best okonomiyaki that I've ever had was in Paris.
What? Best what?
Okonomiyaki. The Japanese sort of omelette-y pancakey thing.
Like cabbage pancake?
Yes, exactly.
I love that thing.
Yep. Best one that I've had was in Paris.
I call it okonomiyaki.
Yes.
You-
I don't
you
know how, my French pronunciation is arguably much better than my Japanese. That's probably part of it.
I was like, is that what I think it is? Because you're not saying it the way I usually say
No,
it.
I'm probably saying it entirely wrong. It's one of those things where I read the word a lot. Well, not a lot. I read the word more than I say or hear the word.
Like, you say it in your head, but it doesn't come out the way you think it does.
Exactly. Exactly.
Like, I swear I read it differently in my head.
Excellent. Well, I will, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Any other ones? Otherwise, I will get things wrapped up and send you off onto your Friday evening.
Yes. Food is happening soon.
Excellent. Well, enjoy your food. If you think of any Paris type questions, just let me know. I think you know where to find me at the library. So welcome to ask me questions as needed. I hope you enjoyed my little whirlwind tour of various sites and things in Paris that I love. And I hope it inspires you to maybe do some traveling sometime, even if it's just via the internet or via books. And again, it is part of the Read the World challenge that we're doing, which wraps up at the end of 2021. So December 31st is the last day to get things kind of accomplished for the challenge. There's a form on the website. If you go to lethlib.ca/teen, there's a link there to a form where you can put in ticky box the challenges that you've done. So the idea is for each challenge, for each continent from which you read a book, you can enter for a prize for that continent.
Hi.
And there are other ones, like, so for this one, yes, there we go. That is it right there. The challenge booklet, the passport. I think there is one at the back there for Armchair Travel. So there will be a prize. I will be doing draws for each of these challenges. I was going to have a big party, but that is not in the cards. So prizes it is. There will be prize packs. There will be an Antarctic prize pack. There will be a Europe prize pack, an Asian prize pack, an African prize pack, a North America prize pack.
I haven't filled up a lot
South America prize pack.
Gotta read a lot.
Did I hit all of them? Maybe
Okay,
not.
so you're gonna read them.
Yes. So for a book, if you read a book that is set there, if you read a book by an author that comes from there, if you need inspiration for books, there are book lists up on the website as well. And then there are the bonus challenges. So if you read a book set in space, that is a bonus.
A book
Space of the Moon. I can't remember what I put. There's a prize pack for space. There's an Armchair Travel prize. There's a book club prize. And some other ones.
Does NaNoWriMo count for a book club?
Yes. I think, yeah, I think there's if there isn't, just count it as that. Yeah. Yeah, if you did a writing club thing instead of a book club thing, that counts. I'm totally happy with that.
Yeah. Sure.
Awesome.
And then Paris. Where is that thing? Oh yeah, read the book in space.
Yes, there should be a whole page for Europe where you can keep track of any books.
And read a book in another language, and read book from author from Lethbridge.
Yes, there we go. Yeah, those are the other bonus challenges. So again, there'll be different prize packs for each of those challenges, and for everybody who says they've completed those, I'll put all of those names for each of those things into the prize draw for each of those prizes. I think that kind of makes sense.
Got
Awesome.
Africa, Asia, Australia, Europe, North America, South America, and Antarctica.
Mm-hmm. Not a book written by somebody born in Antarctica, because I don't know that there are any, except because penguins don't write books, and it's just scientists pretty much who are down there, I think. So, and I don't think any of them has had a baby while there. That would be an accomplishment.
They're like, maybe there has been a single one.
It's true. I have not looked into this, but you'd have to then have that person specifically be the one writing the book. So yes, any book just set in the Antarctic is totally cool. There aren't very many, but there are some. There's some really cool nonfiction books about the science stations and exploration and stuff that's happened down there. Nonfiction totally counts. It doesn't have to be.
There's it's kind of like it's like Antarctica is like just there. We just don't really talk about it. Kind of like
Right? Yeah,
kind of
it's
like
not
Greenland because it's
not
kind of there.
inhabited. It's you know, there's
Kinda like
cool stuff
Greenland,
that
'cause it's
happens,
like
but not where we live.
it's like Greenland's like there's people there. We just don't talk about it. It's like in the middle of
Yeah.
everything, but like we forget it's in the map.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of far away. Yeah. Excellent. All right. Well, I will say good night and happy travels to you.
Yes.
Thank you again for showing up and listening in. I hope you take some cool stuff away from this. And yeah, if you have any questions, you know where to reach me.
Yeah.